It's my great pleasure to welcome Ariel Goodman to Astrology and Cinema in Real Life. I've been a long time admirer of Ariel Goodman's work, and so it's my great pleasure to welcome her. So thank you, Ariel, so much for joining me from Greece. And Ariel, you loved this film, as did I. This is about Frida Kahlo, the artist, and for me, it was a real story about triumph over adversity. You know, how this woman grew up with so many different challenges to overcome, and I really thought that Salma Hayek really knocked it out of the park in her portrayal. So, what do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had been a fan of Frida for quite a while before the film came out. I had seen her exhibitions at the museums in New Mexico. There was a traveling exhibit, and I had just really been fond of Frida. And like you said, triumph over adversity. I just really admired her quite a bit. When I first started working with her chart many, many years ago, like 20 years ago, I don't think there was a birth time available, and it came up different then, but now we seem to have a birth time available. This happens sometimes when people research and go digging, especially people that do biographies and films and things. But Frida definitely knocked it out of the park. And Frida fought for, I mean, Selma fought for quite a while to get this film made. It was like the story of Frida was going around Hollywood. It was going around to different studios. Different people were making different versions of it or tried to make different versions of it. But then Frida came on board and Julie Taymor was the director. It was finally taken up by the Miramax Film Studio, which was run by Harvey Weinstein, who we all know since then has been a convicted sort of sex felon. But and there's an interesting story about it because Frida, in the making of Frida, Selma, who's absolutely gorgeous, I mean, beautiful beyond belief, um, was pressured by Weinstein to do a full frontal nude scene in the film, and she absolutely refused. And he threatened to shut down the production, which was his MO. He did that for a lot of actresses, but somehow or another, I don't know how it happened. Selma's a strong lady, and she had backing and support, and so she didn't really have to go through with that. But there are a few sexual scenes in the film, but that's not really what it's about. This is much more about the tragedy that befell her and also the incredible amount of talent that she had, and that the tragedy, the accident, which was horrific, wasn't going to stop her. Frida's a Cancer son. She spent most of her life after the accident in her home, in her bed, in her bedroom,
Mm.
in her bed, because she couldn't, for a long time, she couldn't walk, she couldn't move, she couldn't do anything. And so they brought her canvases and paints and everything. And she did a lot of painting after the accident in her bedroom. So I thought that was
Yeah.
kind of interesting too. But you can see the accident, you can see the possibility of a tragic accident in the chart when you see that really close Mars Uranus conjunction in her fifth house, and it's opposite in Capricorn, and it's opposite her Sun Neptune conjunction. And I think the Sun Neptune conjunction showed her incredible talent
Mm.
as an artist. Um, she was a strong woman. She also had Venus Pluto conjunct. Um, yeah, I just think there's so much in her chart that we could break down, that we could go into. But those were the things. Oh, and Chiron in the sixth house. Now, when you do astrocartography, um, which we don't have today, but where she was born in Mexico, if you do astrocartography, Chiron is going to show up right on the angle there. It's going to be a Chiron line. And that is pretty much the closest line that in her chart that she was born with over her birthplace. The moon is pretty close too, but the moon in Taurus, which again is an artistic talent, a huge artistic talent. I always see Leo and Taurus as huge artistic talents, and of course also Neptune and Pisces. She has Saturn in Pisces. So she has three of the four signs that I consider very artistically talented in her chart. So that's another thing.
And
Yeah,
her passionate relationships. I mean, I really think that reflects with the Venus-Pluto conjunction.
right.
These weren't just like, she didn't have casual relationships. They were full on passionate. And Diego Rivera, in real life, they were quite the power couple. And coming back
Yes.
to the Cancer vibe, I mean, a lot of people underestimate Cancerians. And, I might be a little bit biased because I'm a Cancer and you're a Cancer, but,
Yeah.
Cancer's got those little clippers, once they hang on to something, they don't let it go. They're tenacious. and
Yeah.
and as you mentioned, she's got that beautiful Neptune conjunct the sun, highly creative and inspirational. And you can understand that when you have somebody who a Cancerian who is laid out flat in bed for a year looking for something to do, it just seems like you could almost say that accident was, you know I don't want to say fated. I don't like that word, but it's something that really brought out that creativity, because that's really where it all started. An unfortunate, terrible thing happened to her, but it gave her that time as she was healing to let that artistic talent come out, and come out it did in such great ways. And you mentioned too about her being the actress standing up to Harvey Weinstein. Frida also had her very strong moral compass. I think it was a little bit downplayed in the film, but she, as on top of being incredibly beautiful, she was also abused in many different ways, but she stood up to her abusers. And as we shall see, these two women actually were the women who helped other women to say no, and you're not going to treat us like this, and this is not going to happen, to me. And I love what you said too about, not everybody who has a Mars Uranus conjunction is going to have a terrible accident. We're not saying that at
Right,
all.
exactly.
We're just saying
It
that
was, but it's one possibility.
yeah, it's just something that that happened. No, so just for people who don't know,
It can also be, it can also be a a really explosive temper, Mars and Uranus, of people that just, have a temper tantrum or blow up about certain things. And Frida did.
mhm.
Um, one other thing I wanted to mention is that her three outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are all conjunct personal planets. Uranus is with Mars, Pluto's with Venus, and the Sun is with Neptune. And that is really highly unusual that all three outer planets are going to be conjunct a personal planet. And so that also shows a lot of power, that the power of the transpersonal planets working on the personal. And before she had her accident, she was quite the feisty young art student. And Diego was the most famous artist in Mexico, and very one of the most famous in the world. He was, he had a lot of power and clout and all that. And Frida, came marching into his studio before she was known at all. I mean, she was just a student and said, "I want you to look at my paintings." And he's like, "Well, who are you?" And she just kind of persisted. And anyway, the rest of the story, he liked her paintings. But you know what you said a little bit earlier about her intensity in relationships with that Venus Pluto. Look at her paintings. The intensity in her paintings is just, it's so real. It's so, it it shows all the pain she was going through on the inside. It was like all of that pain and suffering on the inside was transferred to the canvas, and in a most beautiful way as well.
Well, I think that is, Venus's tendency is if we look at it as being the beautiful part of our chart, and if we put that together with Pluto being like maybe the darkest, maybe dirtiest part of our chart, and then she has a way of
Secret,
capturing that
secret. Yeah,
and bring it out for all of us to see. Because I'm always telling clients, about Pluto is, if you can face your fears, if you can bring them to the light, those fears can't survive because they're naturally afraid of the light. If you see what I mean. So she had that way, although she went through all this stuff of bringing that pain out to be looked at. She was unafraid to look at her own pain and her own suffering. So now I think what we can do is we can start looking at the synastry between the actor and the real life person. So the way I like to do this is I put the Frida Kahlo's chart in the middle, in the center, and then look at Salma Hayek's uh, natal planets compared to that. And Era and I were
yeah,
talking just before we started how striking the synastry is. But
yes.
we'll get there. So just to remind you, so in the very center we have the real life person, the real life artist, Salma Hayek, and just to help viewers to navigate around this. So here's that Sun Neptune conjunction we were talking about. Here's that Venus Pluto conjunction we were talking about, and down here's the Mars Uranus conjunction that we referred to as well. Obviously, being a Jupiter Saturn fan, there are things I'm going to pick up, but I'll let Ariel um, talk to us a little bit about and what she discovered.
Well, what I discovered was that Selma was born 59 years after Frida, and we all know what that is. It's a
Mm.
second Saturn return. And so that means it's the only time in our life at 59 to 60 that we have both a Saturn return and a Jupiter return occurring at the same time. And look at how close their Saturns are, 27 Pisces on the dot. And where is Saturn right now as we're recording this? 27 Pisces on the dot, or pretty close to it anyway. And look at the two Jupiters. We've got Jupiter in Frida's chart at 20 Cancer and in Selma's chart at 20, I can't read that,
25.
26, 25 Cancer. So that's the Jupiter return. And where is Jupiter now? It's bingo right on that spot. So it's kind of interesting that we've got boom, boom, boom. We've got three Saturns and three Jupiters all lined up.
And
But yeah,
just to point out
well, you talk about Saturn and Jupiter a lot. What do you think about them both having that?
well, I was just going to say that the way Jupiter and Saturn works, that they're like, as you said, they're only in the exact same signs once every 60 years. And the fact that these two women could not have met up um, ever in their lives. So when you have an actress who's portraying somebody else, that's what actors do. They portray somebody else. They have to step into their shoes and they have to be able to convince us viewers, people that are watching a film, that they are that that real life person. And this is why I love biopics. That feeling of the suspension of disbelief. You believe
Yeah,
that they are that person. And
yeah,
so the Jupiter Saturn, of course, is very, very important because that Jupiter in a person's life is about how they naturally grow and expand. And Saturn is how they take that expansion and organize it and put it to use and make it work. And I'm always telling people, Saturn returns don't have to be a terrible time of your life. They could be a time of um, sort of achievement, looking back and thinking
yeah,
that, I've done a great job. And I know that Selma was an admirer of Frida Kahlo.
yeah.
She had to be.
Oh,
She fought, as you said, she fought hard for
yeah. She
this
fought
role.
for that role. And she was also a producer on this movie. She was one of the producers. So she, yeah, she had a big stake in this film. but you know me, I love Venus. And when
Mm,
I saw Venus in Selma's chart exactly on Frida's ascendant, I just went, wow.
yeah. Yeah.
And the thing that really that I read about was, and first of all, when I saw the movie, I thought it was visually stunning.
Mm,
It brought me right into the beauty, the color, the richness, almost Taurian, you know, like Frida's Taurus moon of Mexico and
mm,
the jungle and just this beauty all around it, you know, talking birds, colorful talking birds and trees and big flowers and so forth. Selma wore over 50 costumes as Frida, and they were all brightly colored
mm,
fabrics, many of them handmade, also jewelry, many purchased from Mexican street vendors. So to have that real look of authenticity. In other words, they weren't made by a Hollywood movie costumer who said, okay, this is what Mexico is supposed to look like in that era in the 1920s or 30s. This is really what Mexico looks like. So, and this is what Frida looked like, and this is what Selma looked like. So there's that Venus again, that beautiful color and the rich tapestry of it. I just felt so good watching that movie. And it was fiery. Look at Selma's Mars right on Frida's Mercury. She brought a lot of spunk and energy, I would say, to who Frida was and what Frida was trying to communicate. And of course, they're in Leo. They're both in Leo. The ascendant and the Venus are in Leo. So there's a lot of that going on too, that dramatic, bold, bright, look at me, I'm, you know, well, Leo.
mm.
Very, very big and bold and theatrical and but beautiful, very beautiful. So I like that, but especially the fact that the two Saturns and the two Jupiters means that she could really embody. I really felt that's what helped her embody Frida, was to
Mm,
really give what Frida, first of all, both the challenges that Frida went through in her life with Saturn and um, and also notice that Selma has Saturn conjunct Chiron, so she could bring that almost that wounded healer
mm.
archetype to the Saturn of both of them to say, this is what this woman was feeling. I mean, there's a lot of compassion, and you feel so much empathy and compassion for what this woman went through in her struggle um, to be pain free. I mean, to be out of pain and to live her life in the way that, I mean, I don't know how many surgeries she had. I think I read this at one time, numerous surgeries,
Yep.
maybe a couple of dozen surgeries to try to um, correct the spinal injuries that she had. Of course, Saturn has to do with the spine, the spinal cord and all of that. But Jupiter too, the two Jupiters together, I just think, wow, she brought her um, her she expanded her philosophy, her um, just her beauty, her way of expression. She brought it into the public in such a beautiful way and very authentic. I mean, I felt that. I mean, a lot of actors, quality actors, gifted actors, you would know from writing the book, have played their characters with a lot of authenticity. But I think the two Saturns and the two Jupiters really said that this embodied her in a very authentic way,
Yeah,
you know.
I, I really agree. And the other thing that I found through writing Mirror Mirror, and just to remind listeners that I actually watched over 200 biopics, and we
Wow.
pared the book down to 100, 104 to be exact. And I'm currently working on volume two. So, it's quite a compendium of data. And I when I wrote the book, I didn't have Selma's time of birth. And this is kind of the frustration of working with data, is that sometimes it is updated and you have to go back and you have to redo the chart. So thank you for finding Selma's time of birth, because like I said, I use a noon chart in the book. So, having this extra detail has really, I think, made the story come alive, because now we can use the angles. So let's look at Selma's midheaven, which is very close to
Yeah.
that Venus Pluto conjunction that we were
Yeah.
talking about. So this people might want to argue with me. It's her most famous role. I mean, I know she's been in lots of different films, but I think this was the one that really
No,
set her
that's
out
what brought her, catapulted her into, the big,
in,
the
into
big
into into
screen
the
kids.
big
Yeah.
kids, yes. And also the other thing is, I from watching all these biopics, I noticed again and again and again that the nodes are implicated. And so if we
Mm,
look at this, now I was not a big fan of the nodes, because I thought it's just a mathematical point. It doesn't really matter. But as I started, it turned me into a believer looking at these films, because when we say someone's born to play this role, as people did say about Selma, she's born to play this role. Stephen Fry was born to play Oscar Wilde. We can look at the nodes and look at them. Okay, so we got Frida Kahlo with Jupiter conjunct that north node, and Selma's Jupiter conjunct that north node of the artist. So if we talk about fate, we have to look at that Jupiter and bring Frida to life. The actress did. She really poured her
yeah.
heart and soul into this. And she's got a lot of Virgo too, so she would have wanted to get it right. She wanted to get it
Yeah.
perfect. I don't know
Exactly.
too much about the behind the scenes of production, but I would have thought, that Selma was very careful in everything that she did. And from what you described, with choosing the right jewelry from Mexican street vendors to getting the costumes designed perfectly, that all fits into that Virgoan energy as well. And we were talking about spinal injuries. Um, Leo is also a part of the picture of spinal difficulties, and it wasn't. I think that the film, again, my opinion, did center on her artwork and her love life, but behind it was always that pain and suffering of that spinal injury she suffered. And just in case, if you don't, viewers don't know, she suffered a terrible bus accident around the age of 18 or 19. And the injuries were just horrific, and probably too, I'm not going to be too explicit for YouTube, because I'll probably get taken down for it, but awful stuff that she had to suffer. And I think that did
Yeah.
put that her suffering front and center, but it didn't really stop the artist, and it's either artist actually, from telling this story. So
It was the kind of accident that you would think it's a miracle that she survived. It was that intense of an accident, but she did survive. And there's that other thing about Venus Pluto. I think there's a survival instinct with Pluto that says, I'm going to make it. I'm going to prevail. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to make something of this. So I'm going to turn this tragedy into triumph, as you said earlier.
mm,
I really think she did that. So yeah,
you mentioned that you
beautiful.
were a fan of Frida Kahlo. Do you see any of your own planets reflected in Frida's chart? Because
Oh yeah.
what I often say is, if you are a fan, or if you are, interested in a famous person, have a look at your synastry to them. So, if you don't mind, what do you see?
Well, the Sun Neptune conjunction that she has, Sun and Neptune are the closest aspect in my chart. They're 1 degree. They're not a conjunction, but they're 1 degree a square. So I saw that right away. And I also have Venus Pluto, not as close as she does. Mine are further away. Hers are only like a degree away. But I also have the Venus Pluto. And what's the other thing? I have She has a wide conjunction between Sun and Jupiter, and I have a wide aspect also between Sun and Jupiter.
Mm.
So there's three things right there that I saw. Yeah.
And I'm a fan of her work too. I'm only born a few weeks before Selma, so I got the Saturn conjunction with both women,
Mm,
and I have a stellium in Cancer. So and Selma's Jupiter is actually on my sun, and
wow.
yeah, and the Mercury's not too far off. Frida's Mercury's not too far off of my own natal Mercury. So
Mhm,
when I was watching the film, what I really came away with is the stunning visual. Um,
mhm.
of course, I knew about Frida Kahlo before I watched the film. I've heard of her, but it wasn't until I saw the film that I really got it. I
Yeah.
understood, and
And really
and
took her personal journey,
yes,
you know,
yes,
because most people just knew her as a painter on the outside, like she was right up there with Georgia O'Keeffe in
yeah.
terms of the two female painters of the 20th century that just like broke all records and sales and were considered the talent of the time. I mean, there were a lot of great women artists in the 20th century, but these two, I think she and Georgia were right there on top.
I'm a big fan of
Uh,
Georgia O'Keeffe as well. Um, that
yeah.
might. Oh, I wonder when they're going to make a film about her.
Well, I know I've been waiting for that. I mean, I lived in New Mexico for so long, right up the road from where Georgia lived, and I've been waiting for that for a very long time. And I thought Julia Roberts should play her now that Julia is a little bit older, because their Venus star points are conjunct. And I was going to go into the Venus star point here too, which is the work that I specialize in now. But I was going to wait until you showed the release of the film because that really fits into all of this.
Okay, let's get into the release of the film because I really want to hear. Because, as I said, I've been an admirer of your work, your very original work, for a long time on the Venus Star Point, and it's how interesting it's been to see the other astrologers. I mean, this must be very satisfying for you. The other astrologers are really starting to pay attention to the Venus Star Point and even emulate you.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a good feeling. But anyway, so here is the tri-wheel. So just to help you find your way around the chart, Frida Kahlo's in the very center. Selma Hayek is on the outside of that, and on the very outside is the release of the film. Now, I used a noon chart. You use 7, um, so we can't use the angles here. Um, but
Well, I don't know what time it was released.
no, neither
Seven.
do I.
And
I
also,
always
it was released, the first release was in Venice at the Venice International Film Festival. So that date is for Venice rather than Hollywood. But it
mm,
doesn't matter because we're
no,
not angles anyway. But the planets are the same. The planets are pretty much the same. But
and
what I
and
was going to say was the Venus star point for the release was 24 Capricorn. And if you'll notice that you were talking about the nodes before and how important the nodes are.
mm,
So Frida's chart has the north node at 23 Cancer, the south node at 23 Capricorn. The Jupiters of both of them are at 25 Cancer, or 20 to 25 Cancer. And the release of the start point of the film was 24 Capricorn. So the Jupiter was being really highlighted at that time. And then also transiting Jupiter for the release was right on both Frida's Mercury and Selma's Mars. If you look at that lineup, that was like, really pretty much spot on.
mm,
We can't use the midheaven for that release date, although that would have been juicy if the midheaven actually had been that 22
yeah,
Leo.
yeah. Unfortunately, we can't. And the way the Solar
Well, we
Fire
can't use that.
program works, as Margaret Cahill, my publisher, and I discovered, is if you have time charts and you're using a tri-wheel, you can't get rid of the midheaven without distorting the rest of the chart. So, or at least
Yeah.
we haven't found a way of doing that. So, unfortunately, I can't take away the midpoint out of the sorry, the midheaven out of this chart. But um,
Well, usually it's useful. It's useful when we have the time to chart. It's very useful to have, but it's also good to remind people, okay, ignore the midheaven and IC. I mean, it was whether it was 7 p.m. or not, I suppose you could look at the records of the Venice Film Festival for that year to find out what the exact time was. But usually, when you read articles about films, when I've tried to get down to the or events like that, they always put the day, but you hardly ever put the time. Like, Apple released its latest product on, July 15th, 2015 or whatever. And then, but where's the time? Where's the time? It's San Francisco, it's the date, but they never put the time
No,
down.
they don't.
So
And believe me, after watching 200 biopics and more than that now, I've really tried hard to find the dates, and it just ended up being so futile that I gave up, and that's why I'm using a noon chart. And I think, as you pointed out, just because it's a noon chart doesn't mean that there's not useful information in it. We just have to be careful
right,
what we do. Eye
exactly.
eye catching for me was Uranus on the descendant of Frida Kahlo. All right. I mean,
Yeah,
I had never considered, I mean, of course I knew that she was married to Diego Rivera. Of course that but I didn't realize how fiery that relationship was. And I think that,
oh,
when
yeah,
Uranus is on the descendant, um, some people say that Uranus is the planet of divorce, but it surely is the planet of disruption. And it kind of interrupted that narrative. They did not have this quiet, peaceful relationship, at least not in the film.
no,
We can't, as a married couple, we might be able to kind of gloss over and pretend, okay, they were married, but the film revealed a completely different side of this
right.
relationship. So I thought that was interesting. And yeah, you're right with that Jupiter picking up the Frida's Mercury in Leo, and Selma's Mars in Leo, and Jupiter transiting. I mean, that is passion like you wouldn't believe. It's really bringing that to the forefront. And Mercury, if we take it that it's the way that we communicate, Frida more or less communicated through her art, and that was brought to life. So, wow,
And there's the nodes again.
yes.
You've got the release date, you've got the moon at 21 Taurus. But that is on Frida's midheaven because that is a time chart. So that moon is somewhere around her midheaven. The moon's going to be, either a few degrees before, a few degrees after. But there's Selma's north node,
And
and
with
there
the
is
transiting moon.
Frida's moon. Frida's midheaven, the transiting moon, and Selma's north node. So they're all lined up. Moon, north node, moon, midheaven. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to point out, although we don't have an exactly timed chart, um, the moon at 21 degrees Taurus, for the day, it would move 6 degrees one way or 6 degrees the other. Either way, no matter how you put it, it's on the north node. And as
Right.
Ariel says, it does pick up Frida's natal moon um, in the final minutes of Taurus. So, so much really terrific connections.
And one more thing I will say about how Selma, you were saying how Selma, we both were saying that Selma was really catapulted into stardom with this film. And she had been an actress in other films and has been since, but she's always known for Frida. That's
Mm,
the role that she's been defined by. And the Venus star point of Selma is 6 degrees Aquarius. And Neptune, look at Neptune on the release. Neptune was right on Selma's star point. So it was sort of
right.
like Neptune being film and Neptune being the dream that she had for many, many years to bring this project to fruition. And it finally happened. There was Neptune on her natal Venus star point. So,
Wow. And
yeah.
and the other thing, talking about this film being made or being a vehicle for Selma for stardom, transiting Pluto is within a few degrees of her Imam Cheli. So it's that
Oh, yeah.
raw emotion. And also, I think there's a little bit of a historical connection. I think well, Selma was born in and Mexico as well. So there's
Yeah,
that tribal connection, I think, with them, in that, Salma really wanted to tell the story, and the story is so culturally rich, I think. And I think
right.
that Pluto there really captures that, and it certainly made me want to visit Mexico. I've never been, but it's
Exactly. It made Mexico so visually beautiful and lush, and it really paid tribute to Mexico itself.
yes, absolutely. So if you haven't seen this film, I really think that you should see it. Get your popcorn and sit down and watch this film. And um, it's been such a pleasure, Ariel. Thank you for coming on
Thank
and
you.
talking.
I love talking with you. We have fun chatting. We have hung out together a few times, most recently in England and in a beautiful town, and where we both just really enjoyed the energies there too. Uh,
Well,
but
we actually were in a Roman bath. We were we really enjoyed the therapy of bath. And if you want to come to England, um, and of course you have to see London, of course you have to see Edinburgh and other big cities, but Bath gets sidelined a bit, I think, in my opinion. It's a real treat to go there and to just take in the beauty of that city. But anyway, so I wish you all the best, Ariel, and appreciate all your wisdom that you brought to this episode. And thank you very much for
thank you.
joining.
That was really a pleasure talking with you about two of my favorite women.